The Data Analyst Assistant is a Genexus Enterprise AI assistant that uses artificial intelligence to analyze data and generate useful lists, summaries, and descriptions. It provides specific answers in short time frames to support decision making. To define an assistant of this type, the following information must be available. Metadata. This includes a description of each dataset, its columns, including possible data types and values, and considerations for the encoder and interpreter. The glossary should be indicated. It means a list of terms used in the company and/or the user's domain that would be relevant for the LLM to understand the questions. And also the dataset, which is a set of CSV formatted files that follow the descriptions added as metadata. All of this information is then used to communicate with the API, enabling end users to interact with it through Genexus Enterprise AI. Let's see an example of how to create this type of assistant. First, we go to the Genexus Enterprise AI back office. We select the project to work on, and in the Assistance option of the menu, we choose Create Data Analyst Assistant. Next, we must define the metadata. This is a JSON with descriptive information about the information contained in a dataset. It's used to provide context and better understand the available data. This metadata includes details such as the name of the dataset, a description of its contents, and the structure of its columns, including data types. To complete this metadata correctly, a JSON must be defined with the following structure, where the data frame name must contain the name of the dataset and correspond to the name of one of the CSV files to be loaded. The description must provide a description of the dataset, including the data types of its columns and possible values. The column explanations must include a description of each column in the dataset, specifying its purpose and the type of data it contains. It's important to consider that column 1 to column n correspond to the exact names, without blanks or special characters, of the columns in the CSV files to be loaded. The number of columns in the CSV files must match the number of columns provided in this metadata. In addition, it's important to avoid duplication of column names. As for the considerations, they should describe specific considerations for the encoder and the interpreter. The encoder generates the code necessary to process the data. In addition, it uses the metadata information to guide the process of extracting relevant information from the data. As for the interpreter, its role is to generate the final response with the information obtained from the data processing performed by the encoder. It analyzes the results to better understand the data and provide relevant answers. It may include considerations for understanding the technical terms and abbreviations used in the data, as well as specifying that the answers must be provided in the language selected by the end user, or according to the context. In this example, we have a very simple data set, where technology products are recorded, including the respective number of units sold in January to April. We load the metadata, taking into account everything we mentioned above. Good. The next step is to define the glossary. This is also a JSON containing a list of terms used in the end user's company or domain, along with their corresponding definitions. These terms and definitions are relevant for the LLM to understand the questions and provide more accurate answers. For example, it may include abbreviations that are frequently used in the company and their meanings for better understanding in a format like the following. We load the glossary associated with our example. Okay, at this point, the next step is to add files. For that, we must load a file from the dataset by selecting Add Files. It's important to make sure that the CSV file follows the descriptions and metadata added earlier. Finally, to create the assistant, we select Save. A window is displayed to enter a name, description, and icon if desired. We click on Confirm and go back to the page showing the current status of the assistant. This status is related to the loading process of the datasets with the metadata and glossary information. The possible statuses are failed, completed, or processing, indicating the progress percentage. Once the loading status is completed, we can select Update and see the version identifier with which it was saved. Change the name and description, set it as enabled or disabled, or add an icon. It's also possible to edit it, to extend or replace the dataset, or to update the prompt. Expanding the dataset expands the information available without affecting the original structure of the dataset. The files selected for integration must meet the same initial conditions, such as having the same number of columns and file names. The files used for the extension must not contain the same rows that are already loaded in the assistant, as this could generate duplicate keys and cause problems when running the queries. It should also be noted that when increasing the dataset, it's not possible to make changes to the metadata or the glossary. This function focuses only on increasing existing datasets without affecting other aspects of the assistant. Replacing the dataset, on the other hand, allows you to completely replace the data in the existing dataset, as well as modify the metadata and associated glossary. This is useful when you need to update the information completely or make significant changes to the structure and description of the dataset. If Update Prompt is selected, a list of the 28 default prompts will be displayed. It's possible to query and update each of the prompts individually by clicking on Update. This requires the roles Administrator, Project Role, or Organization Role. It's important to note that these updates are made from the list of prompts and not at the general level of the assistant. When generating a new version of the assistant and making changes with the Extend Datasets or Replace Datasets options, changes made to the prompts in previous versions of the assistant will be ignored. As usual, we can finally test the created assistant using the Playground option in the back office menu.